My husband secretly planned a second family with another woman while still living with me and our kids, and I only found out when she showed up at my door asking why he never left. I thought I was having one of those regular rough marriage weeks, the ones where you tell yourself it is just stress and scheduling and 2 kids and being tired. Then a woman I had never seen in my life knocked on my front door and asked me why my husband never left me like he promised her. It was early evening, not late, which somehow made it more jarring, because it was still bright enough that everything looked normal. Kids' voices from the living room, my laundry basket half folded, the hallway light that flickers when you turn it on, the usual boring mess of a house with 2 kids and 2 adults who keep promising to reset on the weekend and never do. I live in Richmond, Virginia, in a row house that always feels one room too small when everyone is home. My husband Graham and I have been here for years. Our kids are June and Asher. And if anyone asked me yesterday, I would have said our marriage was strained but stable, like a chair with a loose leg that you keep sitting in because you do not want to deal with buying a new one. Graham has one of those jobs that makes excuses easy. He is a field tech for a regional telecom contractor. He is always driving somewhere, always handling some emergency call, always getting told last minute that he has to cover a shift. It used to feel like he was providing. Then it started feeling like he was disappearing behind a uniform and a work van and a calendar that never included us unless I forced it. I opened the door because the knock was firm, not aggressive, just confident, like she expected me to answer. And she was standing there holding a diaper bag, not in a dramatic way, just hanging off her shoulder like it belonged. She looked tired in that specific way new parents look tired. Hair pulled back quickly, eyes alert, jaw tight like she was bracing for a fight. She asked if Graham lived here. She said his full name, first and last, like she was confirming an address. I nodded because my brain was already trying to file her into a harmless category, neighbor, coworker, someone from a volunteer thing. Then she asked if he was home, and I said no. He was still out on a job, and I remember the exact second her face changed, because she did not look surprised. She looked angry, like she had just been handed proof of something she already feared. She said she needed to talk to him. I told her he was not here. She asked if I was his wife, and I said yes. And her mouth opened like she was going to say something polite. Then she just exhaled and said, I do not understand why he keeps doing this. He told me he was leaving you. He told me you were basically done. He told me it was just paperwork and timing. My first thought was that I misheard, because my brain can handle a lot of things, but it cannot instantly accept a stranger saying my husband promised to leave me, not without some kind of lag where reality buffers. I asked who she was, and she said her name was Leora, and she said it like she expected it to mean something to me, like it had been hanging in my house for months and I just never noticed it. She said she was sorry, but she needed answers, and she asked, again, why he never left. I stood there with my hand on the door edge and felt this weird calm settle in, not peace, not acceptance, just the part of my brain that goes blank when it thinks screaming will make things worse. June called for me from the living room, asking if it was for her, and I said no, just someone at the door. And I could hear my own voice doing that normal mom tone while my chest felt like it was packed tight. Leora looked over my shoulder into the house, not nosy exactly, just scanning, like she was trying to confirm that I was real, that my home was real, that my kids were real. And I hated that I instantly felt like I had to defend my space from her, even though I did not invite this. I asked her what she meant, and she shifted the diaper bag higher on her shoulder and said she was not here to fight me. She was here because she had been waiting and waiting, and she could not keep explaining to her own family why she was alone. She said Graham had told her he was staying here temporarily so our kids would not be disrupted, and he told her he was sleeping on the couch, and he told her he was saving money for a new place, and he told her he was doing everything the responsible way. The couch part almost made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because Graham has not slept on the couch once in our entire marriage unless he had a cold and wanted to keep me from getting sick. He sleeps in our bed every night he is home. He complains about the mattress. He complains about my side being warmer. He complains about everything, but he is there. I asked how long she had known him, and she hesitated. Then she said long enough that she should not be standing here, long enough that she had tried to be patient, long enough that there were now things involved that she could not undo. She glanced down, and I saw the top of a baby carrier inside the diaper bag, not the baby itself, just the edge of it, and my stomach dropped in a slow, ugly way, because I knew where this was going before she said it. She told me she had a son. She told me her son was Graham's. She told me Graham had told her that he wanted a real family with her, and that once he got through the transition, he would be with them full time. I could feel my face getting hot, then cold, then hot again, like my body did not know what temperature to choose for this level of shock. I asked her how old the child was, and she said almost 2, and I remember my hands went numb, because 2 years means this did not happen during some brief rough patch. It happened during birthdays and holidays and random Tuesdays when I was making dinner and Graham was supposedly at work. It happened during a whole stretch of time where I was living my normal life, thinking my marriage was struggling in normal ways. She said she was not trying to destroy my life. She said she did not know the full truth until recently. And she said Graham had been dragging the leaving conversation out with her too. Always one more reason, one more delay, one more promise. I asked what made her come here today. Why now? And she said he stopped answering her. He stopped showing up. And she got tired of being told to wait. She said she had an address because he had mail sent to her place sometimes by mistake. And she decided she was done being the secret. June called again, louder, and I forced myself to step outside and pull the door mostly closed behind me. Because my kids do not need to see my face right now. They do not need to see a stranger holding a diaper bag in the doorway of their home while their mom looks like she is about to crack. I asked Leora what she wanted from me, and she said she wanted the truth. She wanted to know if he was lying to her about leaving, or if I was the one refusing to let him go. And the fact she even asked that made me flinch, because it showed how he had set this up. He had given her a story where I was the obstacle, not him. I told her I did not know who she was until 5 minutes ago, and Graham has not told me anything about leaving. I told her we have been having issues, but there has never been a separation, never been a move out, never been a conversation where he told me he was starting a new life with someone else. Leora stared at me like she was trying to decide if I was lying. Then she reached into her diaper bag and pulled out a folded stack of paper. She said she did not come unprepared, and she held it out, not shoving it at me, just offering it like evidence in a situation that suddenly needed evidence. I did not want to take it, because taking it made this real, but I took it anyway, and it was a copy of a lease, not a full packet, but enough. It showed a different address, still in Richmond, a townhouse rental across the river. It had a move-in month from over a year ago, and Graham's name was on it, his signature, and Leora's name was on it too. I looked at it and felt my throat tighten, because we have never moved. We have never had money to casually rent a second place. We argue about expenses like most couples do. We are not swimming in extra cash. So if he rented another place, that means he made that money appear by cutting something from us, or by hiding something, or by lying about overtime, or all of it. Leora told me Graham called it their place. She said he stayed there when he could. She said he brought toys for their child. She said he talked about our kids as if they were obstacles that would eventually adjust. And she said that part made her uncomfortable. She said she did not want to replace anyone. She wanted him to actually finish what he kept promising. I asked her if she knew he was still living here full time, and she shook her head and said she thought he was half here, half there. She said he told her our marriage was basically over, and he was only here to keep things stable until the timing was right. She said she did not understand why he still had family photos up, why he still wore his ring sometimes, why he kept saying he could not leave yet because of one more reason. I asked if she had ever met my kids, and she said no, and something in me eased for half a second, because at least he did not bring her around them. At least he did not blend our worlds. And then I remembered the lease again and realized he did blend it. He just did it behind my back. Leora asked what I was going to do, and my brain wanted to say I have no idea, but my mouth said something else. My mouth said you need to go, not because I hated her, but because I could not hold my face together any longer, and she nodded and said she understood. But before she left, she told me something that made me feel like the ground shifted again. She said Graham had been telling her for weeks that I knew, that I was aware of her, that I was the one who kept begging him to stay, and that he felt trapped. Trapped, as if a man with a secret lease, and 2 homes, and 2 lives, is trapped by the wife he lies to. Leora walked down my steps and turned once. She asked if I could at least tell her one thing. She asked if he was coming home tonight, and I told her yes, and she swallowed hard and said okay. Then she left, and I stood there with the lease copy in my hand feeling like I was holding a piece of someone else's life. Inside, June asked who it was, and I lied and said it was someone looking for the wrong house, because my kid is not getting the truth in the middle of a weekday like this. Asher was building a tower on the rug, completely unaware, and I kept thinking about Leora saying her son was almost 2, and I kept doing mental math against our own timeline, and every answer made me feel worse. I did not call Graham right away, because if I called him, he would have time to invent a story, he would have time to calm his voice, he would have time to decide what to admit and what to deny, and I needed him to come home thinking he was walking into his normal life. So I did something I never do. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened the file drawer where we keep boring household paperwork, and I started pulling statements, not because I am some genius investigator, but because I suddenly understood there were probably trails everywhere and I had just never looked. It did not take long to find the first one, a utility bill I did not recognize, not ours, not in our neighborhood, a different service address. It was in Graham's name, and it had been mailed to our house once, then a line through it like someone had marked it as handled, and I stared at it and realized he had been sloppy at least once, and I had been too trusting to notice. Then I checked our bank app, not scrolling dramatically, just filtering by recurring payments. and I saw one I had mentally labeled as something else for months. A monthly payment to a property management company I assumed was our homeowner insurance, except it was not our insurer. It was a rental management group, and I felt my hands shake as I clicked the details and saw the reference number that matched the lease Leora had handed me. I went cold because this was not just an affair, this was infrastructure, this was planning, this was money carved out of our shared life to build another shared life. And he did it while sitting at our dinner table, while helping our kids with homework, while kissing me goodbye in the morning. I kept digging because now I could not stop, and I found small charges that looked random, a storage unit payment, not large, but consistent. And I realized he probably had a place to stash duplicates, clothes, kids' items, whatever he needed to maintain two identities without carrying bags through our house like a cartoon villain. By the time I heard the front door open that night, I had the lease copy, the utility bill, the payment record, and a page of notes I had written on the back of an old envelope because my hands needed something to do. Graham walked in with his work bag. He called out a greeting like normal. He asked if dinner was happening soon. He sounded tired in the way he always sounds tired. And for one insane second, I almost believed I imagined the whole thing. Then he walked into the kitchen and saw my face, and his eyes flicked down to the paper in my hand, and his entire posture changed. He did not ask what happened. He asked, who was here? That was the moment I knew, because he did not say, why do you look like that? He did not say, are you okay? He said who was here, like he was already tracking the threat to his secret. I told him a woman named Leora came to our door, and I watched his face drain, and he tried to recover. He tried to put the calm husband mask back on, but it did not sit right anymore. I told him she asked why he never left. I told him she said she has a son who is his, and I told him she handed me this lease, and I held it up, and he stared at it like it might burn him. He started speaking fast, not yelling, just fast. He said it is not what it looks like. He said she is unstable. He said she is trying to mess with us. He said she is exaggerating. He said she is obsessed with him. And the more he talked, the more I felt this dull anger build, because he was trying to manage the narrative again. He was trying to make her the problem and me the audience. I asked him one question. I asked him why his name is on a lease for a house he never told me about, and he opened his mouth, closed it, then said he was helping someone out. He said it was temporary. He said it was complicated, and I just stared because that was the worst lie, the kind that assumes I am too tired to challenge it. I asked if he has a child with her, and he went still. Then he said yes, but he said it like it was a small detail in a bigger story, like it was something that happened to him, not something he did. June walked into the kitchen then because she heard voices shift. She asked if we were arguing, and Graham immediately softened his tone. He told her everything was fine. He told her to go back and finish her show, and she hesitated, then walked away. And I watched him do that smooth dad voice and felt this surge of disgust because he could switch so easily. I told him we were not doing this in front of the kids, and I told him to take his bag and go upstairs and pack what he needs for the night, and he asked where he was supposed to go, and I said maybe to the place he rented, and he flinched like I slapped him with the truth. He told me I was overreacting. He told me it was not like he was trying to replace us. He told me he never stopped loving our kids. He told me he was just trying to figure things out, and the phrase trying to figure things out made me feel like my head might split open. Because you do not figure things out by signing a lease and making a child and telling another woman you are leaving your wife. I told him to go pack, and he stood there like he wanted to argue. Then he looked toward the living room where the kids were, and he did this little recalculation, and he went upstairs. While he packed, I stood in the hallway and listened to drawers open and close, and I kept thinking about Leora holding that diaper bag, and I kept thinking about my own kids sitting on the rug, and I kept thinking about the years of tiny moments where Graham said he was doing something for us, overtime, extra jobs, late calls, and now I could see what some of it was actually funding. When he came down, he had a duffel bag that I had never seen before, which confirmed everything again. He had a separate bag, a separate life, and he held it like it was normal. He asked if we could talk. He asked if I could just listen, and I told him there is nothing to listen to tonight, because the facts are already here. I told him he can leave and we can talk later with structure, and he asked what that meant, and I said it means not me alone in my kitchen while he tries to talk me into accepting a life he built without my consent. He stared at me and his voice went sharp. He asked if I was going to take the kids from him, and I told him the kids are asleep in their own home, and he is the one walking out, and he looked like he wanted to say something else, but he stopped himself. He left, and the house went quiet, and I stood there in the hallway feeling like my body forgot how to move. Because even in anger, there is grief. There is the grief of realizing the person you built your life around has been building another one behind your back. I did not sleep much, not because I was packing dramatically, but because every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Leora saying her son was almost 2, and I pictured Graham holding our toddler years ago, and I pictured him holding another toddler somewhere else. and my brain could not make those two images coexist without feeling like I was going to vomit. The next morning, I got the kids ready like normal. I packed lunches. I found missing socks. I did the whole routine on autopilot, and I kept my voice steady because my kids deserve steady. And then when they were out of the house and the door clicked shut, I sat down at the kitchen table again and stared at the lease copy and realized I had to decide what kind of person I was going to be in the next few weeks, because Graham had already decided what kind of person he was. I did not call my best friend to cry. I did not call my mom. I did not have that kind of support set up anyway. Most of my family is scattered and not involved day to day, and I did not want comfort right then. I wanted clarity. So I called a family law office and asked for a consult. Not dramatic, just a plain call. And when they asked why, I said my husband has been maintaining a second household and I need to protect my kids and my finances. And the receptionist got very quiet and very professional, and she gave me the next available appointment. Then I called the credit union and asked how to pull a full history and whether there were any joint accounts I did not recognize. And the woman on the phone asked me a lot of verification questions, and I answered them with a calm I did not feel, because I suddenly understood the scope of what could be hidden: loans, cards, lines of credit, things in my name, and the scariest part was not the betrayal. It was the possibility that he used our family identity as raw material to build the second one. That afternoon, Graham texted asking if he could come by to see the kids, and I told him yes, but only while I was home, and he replied with a single word that felt like a threat even though it was not. He replied okay, and I stared at it and realized that even now he was trying to set the tone, like he was the reasonable one agreeing to my unreasonable conditions. When he came over, he played dad perfectly. He knelt on the floor with Asher. He asked June about her day. He kept his voice warm, and I watched him and felt like I was watching someone act in a role he had rehearsed. He pulled me aside near the hallway and asked if I had talked to Leora again, and I told him no, and he asked if she told me lies, and I told him the lease is not a lie. The payments are not a lie. The child is not a lie, and he stared at me and said he never wanted to hurt me, and something inside me snapped, because that sentence is what people say when they want you to forget what they did. They say it like intention erases impact. I told him he does not get to say he never wanted to hurt me while standing in the house he used as cover for a second family, and he swallowed hard and said he was going to fix it. He said he would break it off. He said he would make things right. He said he would do whatever I needed. I asked him a simple question. I asked him what does make it right look like when there is a toddler involved, when there is a woman who built her own life around his promises, and he looked away because he did not want to answer, because any real answer makes him the villain in his own head. That night after he left again, I got a message from a number I did not know. It was Leora. She said she was sorry for showing up. She said she did not mean to scare me. She said she just needed to know, and she asked if I wanted proof beyond the lease because she had more. I stared at the message for a long time, because part of me wanted to block her and pretend this could be handled privately. Then I remembered Graham's face when he asked who was here, and I realized he was more afraid of being exposed than he was ashamed of what he did. So I replied and asked what she had, and she said she had mail, and she had pictures, and she had a copy of an insurance enrollment form where Graham listed her son as a dependent, and she said she had a note he wrote her that talked about moving them closer to his real kids, and that phrase, real kids, made me feel like I was choking. I told her to stop sending anything that included my kids, and she said she understood, and she said she never wanted to touch my kids' world. She only wanted him to stop lying, and I believed her in that moment more than I believed Graham, which is something I never imagined I would say about a stranger. I went to bed with my phone on silent and my heart pounding, because the next step was going to change everything, and I could feel it, not in a dramatic prophecy way, just in that blunt adult way where you can see the practical dominoes lined up: lawyers, schedules, money, custody, school forms, explaining to kids in an age-appropriate way, trying not to poison them with anger, trying not to let Graham frame himself as the victim, trying not to collapse while still packing lunches and folding laundry like life is not on fire. And the worst part, the part that kept repeating in my head, was that for almost 2 years, Graham came home to me and our kids, hugged us, ate at our table, slept in our bed, then walked out to build a second family like he was collecting lives, like we were all just rooms he could step in and out of whenever he felt like it. Update, 2 weeks later. The first 2 weeks after Leora came to my door felt like living inside a filing cabinet, because everything I did was paperwork, phone calls, accounts, screenshots, forms, and I kept thinking, this is what he built for me. He built a mess so complex that the only way out is administration. Graham did not move back in, not officially. He stayed at the townhouse on the lease. And he tried to act like that was a temporary arrangement we both agreed on. He told me he was giving me space. He told me he did not want to disrupt the kids. He told me he would come by in the evenings to help. and he said it like he was still in control, like he was still the one deciding how our family transitions. He also started rewriting history immediately, not in one huge lie, but in small, steady framing. He would say things like we have been distant for a long time. He would say we both knew things were not working. He would say he just made a mistake in how he handled it. And every time he did that, I felt this cold rage, because he was trying to make his secret life sound like a mutual slow drift instead of a deliberate double structure. The consult with the family law attorney happened in a plain office building. Nothing dramatic, just beige walls and a waiting room with a water cooler. And I sat there thinking about how many people sit in these chairs after their life explodes quietly at home. The attorney asked for the basics: marriage length, kids' ages, income, assets, debts. And when I explained the second lease and the child, she did not gasp or act shocked. She just got focused. She told me the priority is to stabilize custody, stabilize finances, and stop any further hidden obligations from attaching to me. She told me to pull credit reports. She told me to change account passwords. She told me not to drain accounts in a panic, but to track everything. And she told me to assume that if he could lie about a child for almost 2 years, he could lie about money too. That last sentence hit harder than I expected, because it made me realize I had been treating the affair as the main betrayal, but the bigger betrayal might be the financial architecture underneath it, because money is what makes a double life possible. Money is what keeps 2 households running. And if he was pulling money from our shared life, that impacts my kids directly. That is not just emotional damage, it is practical harm. I pulled my credit report and found 2 things that made my stomach drop. One was a credit card account opened in his name only that had my address as the mailing address for the first few months. Then it switched to the townhouse address. And the other was a personal loan inquiry that I did not recognize. It did not show the loan itself, just the inquiry. And the inquiry listed our marital home as his primary residence and the townhouse as a secondary, which made it clear he was presenting himself differently depending on which version benefited him in the moment. I did not find anything directly in my name, which should have been relief. But it just made me feel more aware of how close it could have been, how easily he could have done that too. And I started locking things down like someone who just learned the hard way that trust is not a security system. Meanwhile, Leora and I ended up talking more than I wanted to, not in a bonding way, not in a friendship way, just in a factual way, because she had information I needed. And she wanted the truth too. She wanted to know if Graham was lying to her about me, and she wanted to know what he was telling me about her. And it became obvious quickly that he had been telling both of us different stories to keep both of us just calm enough to stay put. Leora told me he did not call her his girlfriend in public. He called her his partner. He called her his future. He called her the person who finally understood him. And she said he talked about me like I was cold and controlling. And she said he would describe our home like a dead space he was trapped in for the kids. And hearing that made me feel humiliated and furious at the same time, because he used our kids as a shield. He used them as a reason for his delay. And then he used them again as a justification to make me sound like the villain. I asked her why she stayed if he kept delaying, and she said because he made it feel like it was always one step away, always one more hurdle, always one more kid-related reason. And she admitted something that made me respect her honesty even though it hurt. She said she believed him because she wanted to believe him. She said she did not want to be the kind of person who breaks a family. So she clung to the idea that the family was already broken, and she was just waiting for the last piece to fall. I told her I did not know how to process the fact her child exists, and she said she does not expect me to. She said she is not asking me to accept it emotionally. She is asking me to accept it practically, because her child deserves support and stability too, and that made my chest tighten, because she was right. And it was also not my job to fix what Graham did, but my kids still live in the blast radius either way. Graham started pushing for a meeting between the kids, not right away, but he kept hinting at it. He kept saying it would be healthier if everyone was honest. He kept saying he wants the kids to know their sibling, and he said sibling like it was a cute surprise instead of a bomb. I told him no, not now, and he got irritated, not loudly, just in that tight, controlled way where he acts like you are being unreasonable. He said I was punishing the kids. He said I was letting my anger dictate, and I told him my anger is the only thing keeping me from pretending this is normal, and I am not introducing my kids to a secret they are not ready for because he suddenly decided honesty is convenient. The escalation hit a few days later when June came home from school and asked why Dad has another house. She said it casually at first, like a kid sharing random trivia. Then her face scrunched up, and she asked if Dad is leaving because she did something wrong. I felt like someone punched the air out of me, because I had been so careful. I had been keeping adult conversations behind closed doors. I had been managing my voice, and now it was in my child's mouth, which meant Graham had said something he should not have, or someone else did, or she overheard. And the fact it leaked at all made me furious. I asked June who told her that, and she said Dad said he has a workplace he stays sometimes, and she asked if that means he loves us less, and I told her no. And I told her adults sometimes live in different places when they are working things out. And I kept it simple, and she nodded. But she did not look convinced. And I realized I was now in the position of soothing my kid while the person who caused the harm pretends he is doing a responsible transition. That night I told Graham he does not talk to the kids about the townhouse again without me present. And he snapped. He said he is their father. He said I cannot control what he says. And I told him if he wants to be their father, he starts by not confusing them with half-truths that make them blame themselves. Then the second twist hit. The one that made me realize this was not just two households. It was a planned merge, because Leora texted me a photo of a document she found in Graham's things. It was a printed draft of a school enrollment transfer, not filled out fully, but it had my kids' names typed in, and it had the townhouse address as the residence, and it had a note in the margin about timing it with the next academic year so it feels like a natural move. I stared at that photo until my eyes hurt, because it meant he was not just hiding a second family. He was planning to relocate my children without my knowledge. He was planning to fold them into his second life like pieces on a board, and he was doing it while still coming to my house and asking what we were doing for the weekend. When I confronted him about that document, he did not deny it. He minimized it. He said it was just thinking ahead. He said he was exploring options. He said it was responsible to plan. And I asked him how it is responsible to plan a school transfer without telling the other parent. And he got quiet in the way he gets quiet when he knows he is caught but still wants to maintain dignity. I told my attorney about it, and she told me we needed to file for temporary orders. Not emergency screaming crisis orders, but temporary structure. Something that sets expectations about residency, school decisions, and communication, because Graham was already acting like he had the right to move pieces around without consent. Graham reacted to being served papers with pure offense. He told me I was escalating. He told me I was making it legal when it did not need to be. He told me we could have handled it privately, and I asked him how exactly, because private handling was what he did for almost 2 years, and private handling is how we got here. The week after he was served, he started showing up at my house at odd times, not late night, not dramatic, just unpredictable. He would arrive earlier than expected. He would ask to take the kids on short errands. He would ask if they could come to the townhouse for a few hours, and the unpredictability felt like pressure, like he was testing boundaries, seeing where I would give in. So I stopped giving him access to my day, not by being cruel, by being structured. I told him he could see the kids at scheduled times, and we would keep it consistent. And he hated that, because structure means he cannot improvise narratives as easily. Leora, meanwhile, told me she confronted him too. She told him she went to the townhouse and asked him why she was finding out he still sleeps in my bed sometimes, and she said he got angry at her for coming to my house. He told her she ruined everything, and he told her he needed time, and she said she finally realized he was never going to choose a clean exit. He was going to keep both households as long as it benefited him. The part that still makes my skin crawl is that he tried to pitch both of us on patience. He told me to give him time to make things right. He told her to give him time to transition, and both of those requests were just him asking for continued access, continued comfort, continued control. By the end of the 2 weeks, I had temporary orders filed, my finances locked down as much as they could be without doing something reckless, and a calendar that felt like a lifeline because it put predictable edges around a man who had spent 2 years proving he likes lives without edges, lives he can step between. And I still had to wake up every morning, make lunches, answer school emails, fold laundry, and act like my house was not the aftermath of someone else's long-term plan. Update, 2 months later. 2 months is long enough for shock to turn into routine. And that sounds awful, but it is true. You cannot stay in raw panic forever. Your body gets tired. Your kids need breakfast. Bills still exist. And eventually you start living inside a new normal, even if the normal is you sharing custody with a man who lied to your face for 2 years. The temporary orders hearing happened, and the judge set basic ground rules. Residency stays consistent. School decisions require mutual agreement, and parenting time gets structured, which was exactly what Graham hated, because it meant he could not just decide to move the kids into his townhouse life and call it progress. Graham acted wounded about it. He started telling anyone who would listen that I was keeping him from his kids, which was not true. He was seeing them consistently. He just was not seeing them on demand. And that distinction mattered, because demand is how he ran his double life. He demanded access when it suited him. He disappeared when it did not. I did not have the luxury of disappearing. I had June asking hard questions. I had Asher melting down when schedules changed. And I had to start introducing the idea that families can look different without making my kids feel like their world was unstable. I kept it simple. I told them mom and dad are living separately. I told them both parents love them. I told them the schedule is the schedule. And when June asked if dad will come back home, I told her I do not know. And it broke my heart because she deserved certainty and I could not give it to her honestly. Graham tried to push the sibling introduction again. He framed it as the kids having a right to know, and he kept pushing in that smooth, reasonable tone that makes you sound petty if you resist. And I held the boundary, not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because June was still trying to understand why Dad had another house, and Asher was still asking why Dad does not tuck him in every night. And the idea of throwing another child into that mix felt like setting a new fire, while the first one was still burning. Leora reached out less during this stretch, which I was grateful for, not because I hated her, but because I needed space to focus on my own household. And I could tell she was in her own crisis too, because she finally started seeing Graham clearly, not as a complicated good guy, but as a man who uses people like furniture, something he can sit on when he is tired, then leave when he is done. Then the unexpected twist came from a place I did not anticipate, not Leora, not Graham, but a letter that arrived addressed to my husband at my house, and normally I would have left it in the pile for him to pick up. But this one had a return address that made my stomach tighten. It was from a hospital billing department. I did not open it. I did not do that, but I called Graham and told him he had mail here and he needed to pick it up, and he tried to brush it off. He said just leave it. He said he would grab it later, and something about his tone made me uneasy because it was too casual, like he wanted that envelope to sit in my house where I would eventually ignore it. So I did the one thing my attorney told me to do whenever something feels off. I documented that it arrived. I took a photo of the front of the envelope, and I put it in a folder with other evidence, because even if I never opened it, it mattered that it came here. It mattered that his paper trail kept leaking back into my home like oil seeping through walls. Leora texted me the next day asking if Graham was still using my address for anything official. She said she found mail in the townhouse that still had my address on it, and she sounded exhausted, not angry, just worn down. And I told her yes, he still has things coming here, and she replied with one short message that made my stomach drop. She said he applied for a marriage license with her, and it got flagged because he is still married to me. My brain did this slow, stunned pause, because I knew he was bold, but I did not realize he was that bold. And it also meant he was not just planning a second family emotionally. He was trying to formalize it, trying to make it legal while still living in my home part-time and holding our kids in his arms. And the phrase flagged kept echoing, because it meant someone in a clerk office somewhere looked at his file and said no. Leora told me she did not know he was still legally married in a way that mattered. She said he told her it was basically done. She said he told her the divorce paperwork was in motion. And she said she only found out because she went with him and watched the clerk's face change. I felt this weird combination of fury and relief. Fury that he tried it at all, relief that the system caught it. Because if he had succeeded, it would have created a new layer of chaos. Not just emotional betrayal, but legal entanglement. Graham, of course, tried to blame everyone else for that too. When I confronted him about it, he said Leora misunderstood. He said it was just checking requirements. He said he was trying to be responsible, and I asked him why he would do that while still married, and he snapped and told me I was acting like his mother. And then he said the most revealing thing he has said through all of this. He said he just wants everyone to stop making him the bad guy. Everyone, meaning me and Leora and the clerk and reality itself. The next escalation hit my finances because I noticed a withdrawal from our joint account that did not match our usual bills. Not huge, but enough to be noticeable. And when I asked Graham about it, he claimed it was a work reimbursement issue. He claimed it was temporary, and I told him he does not touch joint funds without consent, and he told me I was being controlling again. And then he said he has expenses too, and I asked him what expenses, and he went quiet. Because the answer was obvious. He had been funding 2 households, and now the second household was not cooperating, and he was trying to stabilize himself by pulling from what he still could access. My attorney filed a motion to restrict unilateral withdrawals, and Graham reacted like I was stealing from him, which is rich, because he had been stealing time, money, trust, and stability for years. But in his mind, the only theft that matters is what happens to him. During this time, June overheard something she should not have, not because I was careless, but because kids hear everything. Graham made a comment during a pickup about his other child, and June asked me later if Dad has another kid, and I had to decide in that moment whether to lie or to tell a version of the truth she could carry. I told her yes, Dad has another child, and it is not her job to fix anything about that, and she went very quiet. Then she asked if that means Dad loves us less, and I told her love is not a pie that runs out, but actions matter, and Dad has made choices that hurt people, and we are going to keep her safe and steady no matter what. And she nodded slowly like she was trying to fold the information into her brain without tearing it. After that, she started watching Graham differently. She did not cling as much when he showed up. She asked more questions, and I hated that this is what he gave her. He gave her adult doubt inside a child's heart. Leora finally broke her own pattern too. She stopped waiting politely. She told me she confronted Graham and told him she was done being the side life. And she told him either he commits to a real honest relationship with her with real boundaries and real timelines, or she files for child support and custody and lets the court force structure the way I'd. Graham reacted by trying to pressure me. He came to my house not to yell, but to plead. He asked if I could pause the legal stuff. He said Leora was threatening him. He said he felt attacked from both sides. And I listened to him talk about feeling attacked, and I felt this icy clarity, because he was finally experiencing what he created, two households demanding truth at the same time, and he could not juggle it anymore. I told him no, there is no pause, and he looked at me like I was cruel, like I was the one doing harm, and he left with that same duffel bag, and I stood in my hallway thinking, he still sees himself as the main character, even now, even after everything. Then the final twist of this update hit, because Leora sent me a photo of the townhouse living room, and in the corner I saw a familiar piece of furniture, not sentimental, just familiar. A small cabinet we had in our home years ago that I thought we donated when we rearranged, and I remembered it clearly because it had a loose hinge that Graham always said he would fix, and there it was, in his second house. I confronted him about that cabinet, and he admitted he took it from our storage unit months ago. He said it was just sitting there. He said it was useless to us. He said he needed it. And he said it like that made it fine, like he had not been quietly extracting pieces of our shared life to furnish the second one. I went to the storage unit the next day and found it half empty, boxes missing, random household items gone, and the emptiness felt like a metaphor so obvious it almost made me laugh, because he had been hollowing out our life in slow pieces for a long time, and I had not noticed until someone knocked on my door and forced me to look. Final update, 6 months later. 6 months after Leora came to my door, the chaos did not resolve in one dramatic moment. It resolved in a series of legal decisions and social consequences that Graham kept trying to dodge until he ran out of places to hide. The divorce moved forward faster than I expected once everything was documented. The lease, the financial records, the attempted marriage license, the storage unit extraction, the inconsistent addresses, and the way he kept trying to control the narrative while ignoring basic boundaries. Graham tried one last strategy that he probably thought was clever. He tried to present himself as a man who made mistakes, but was committed to being a good father. He started showing up to parenting exchanges with an almost exaggerated calm. He started calling me by a softer nickname he never uses anymore. He started offering to take the kids extra. He started acting like he was finally the cooperative co-parent. It would have worked on me years ago, because I used to reward any scrap of cooperation like it was proof we could fix things. But now it just looked like what it was, a performance designed to look good on paper. Leora filed for custody and child support in her own case, and that was the moment Graham lost the ability to keep everything vague, because the court does not care about his feelings. It cares about numbers, schedules, addresses, and what is verifiable. He tried to pull me into a side deal right after that. He asked if we could settle privately so the courts would not look too closely at him, and he framed it as protecting the kids from conflict. But it was really him protecting himself from exposure. I told him no again, and he stared at me like I was ruining his life, which was almost impressive, because the level of entitlement it takes to build a second household and still feel like the injured party is something else. A week later, the kids' school called me, not about academics, about a records request. The office staff told me they received a request to transfer the kids' records to a different district, and they wanted to confirm if it was authorized. My hands actually went cold around my phone, because it meant he tried again, even after temporary orders, even after being told no, even after months of pretending he was cooperative. I asked who submitted it, and the staff member said it was submitted by Graham, and she sounded careful, like she could tell this was the kind of call that can turn messy fast, and I asked if they processed it, and she said no, because there was a note on file that school changes require both parents' consent. I thanked her so much my voice got tight. Then I called my attorney, and she got quiet in that way she gets quiet when something crosses from irritating to serious. She told me to forward the school's documentation, and she told me we were going to file a motion about interference. When I told Graham that the school called, he did not deny it. He did not even try the old lies. He went straight to anger. He said he was trying to make things easier. He said it would be better for the kids to have one stable home base, and he said it like the obvious solution was my kids moving into the townhouse he rented for his second life. I asked him if he understands how he sounds, and he said something that made my stomach drop. He said he is their father, and he is not going to be treated like a visitor in their lives. He wanted them full-time, not because he had earned trust, but because he wanted control back, because splitting custody meant he could not run his life like a stage anymore. At the same time, Leora started pushing back on him in her own way. She messaged me to warn me that Graham was suddenly talking about moving out of state for a job opportunity, and he was framing it as a fresh start for everyone. And he was saying it like he could just relocate multiple children and multiple mothers like it is a calendar adjustment. I forwarded that to my attorney too, and my attorney did not sound surprised. She sounded annoyed. She said when someone loses narrative control, they try geographic control. The next hearing happened a few weeks later. Not a dramatic full trial, just one of those short court appearances where everyone stands and speaks in tight sentences, and my attorney laid out the pattern, the secret lease, the attempted school transfer, the money pulled from joint funds, and the attempted marriage license that got flagged. Graham's attorney tried to argue that Graham was only exploring options, that he was not actually moving the kids, that he was stressed, that he made mistakes, and the judge asked one blunt question that cut through everything. The judge asked, why does he keep making unilateral decisions that involve the children, after being told repeatedly he cannot? Graham started talking about wanting stability, and the judge stopped him and said stability does not come from secrecy. It comes from consistency and cooperation. The judge did not punish him in some dramatic way right then, but the judge tightened the orders. School decisions were reinforced. Relocation restrictions were clarified, and there was now a requirement that parenting communication be done through a recorded co-parenting system. So Graham could not keep trying to corner me in hallway conversations and then pretend it never happened. Graham hated that system because it makes him sound like himself on record, and he cannot edit himself after. A couple of weeks after that, he showed up for pickup and acted extra cheerful. He brought the kids new clothes that still had tags, and June looked uncomfortable because she is old enough to feel when adults are trying too hard. Asher just wanted to show him a drawing, and Graham praised it loudly. Then he looked at me and said, with that same too calm tone, that the kids have been asking about their brother. The kids had not asked me that. June had asked one time what it means, but she had not been begging for introductions, and hearing him claim they were asking felt like him trying to use their voices again. I told him we are not doing that right now, and he smiled like I was being unreasonable, and he said it is going to happen eventually whether I like it or not. That night June asked if Dad is mad at her, and I asked why she thought that, and she said he kept asking if she wants to meet someone, and she said she did not know what to say because she did not want to make him sad, and my chest ached because he was putting his emotional mess on a child again, just in a softer package. I messaged him through the co-parenting system and told him he stops bringing this up to the kids. If he wants to discuss sibling introductions, he discusses it with adults first. And he replied that I cannot dictate his parenting. Then he added that I am trying to erase his son from the world. I showed that message to my attorney, and she said we were going to request a parenting coordinator, not for feelings, for boundaries, because Graham kept turning every reasonable limit into an accusation that I was cruel. Then the thing happened that finally snapped his double life into something the court could not ignore. Leora called me, not texted, called, and her voice was shaking. She said Graham had been telling her he was going to get full custody of June and Asher, and once he did, he planned to have all 3 kids in the townhouse. And she said he had been pressuring her to quit her job and be available full-time because he said the court would like a stable at-home household. When she pushed back, he got angry, and he told her she should be grateful he chose her, and he told her she would never have had a family like this without him. She told me she realized in that moment that he was not building a family. He was building a set, a place where everyone follows his script, and when someone stops following it, he replaces them or punishes them. I asked her if she was safe, and she said he did not hit her. But she said he grabbed her phone during an argument and threw it. And she said he told her if she keeps causing problems, he will make sure she gets nothing in court. I told her to document everything and talk to her attorney, and I kept my voice steady. But when I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the wall, because this was spreading. It was no longer just my home. It was now the townhouse. It was now Leora. It was now 3 kids in 2 households being pulled around by one man's need to control perception. A week later, my attorney called and told me Graham's employer had been subpoenaed for records in Leora's child support case, and during that process, Graham's employer discovered he had been falsifying mileage logs and job site reports to cover time spent at the townhouse, because he had been claiming he was on calls that did not exist, and his supervisor apparently was not thrilled to learn that. Graham called me that night furious. He accused me of ruining his job, and I told him I did not contact his employer, and I could tell by his silence that he knew exactly what happened. His lies were collapsing from multiple angles, and he needed someone to blame. He told me he might lose his job, and he said that means I will get less support, and he said it like a threat, like he was willing to burn the whole structure as long as I felt the smoke too. I did not respond emotionally. I told him communication stays in the co-parenting system, and I hung up, And it was the first time I felt something close to power, because the boundary held, and he could not pull me into his chaos in real time anymore. The final divorce hearing came a few weeks after that, not because the system is fast, but because once both cases were moving, mine and Leora's, there were too many documents contradicting Graham's stories. Too many records showing he had been presenting himself differently depending on who was listening. The judge finalized the divorce, set a custody schedule that prioritized consistency for June and Asher, and restricted unilateral decisions in a way that left Graham less room to improvise. And child support was set based on actual income documentation rather than whatever Graham wanted to claim. The financial part was not cinematic. It was just numbers and orders, but the court also addressed the hidden lease payments, the storage unit, and the joint account withdrawals. And Graham ended up having to reimburse a portion because the paper trail showed he used marital funds for a second household. Graham walked out of court looking smaller, not remorseful, just compressed, like someone who finally hit a wall that will not negotiate. The last loose end was the kids meeting their half-brother, and that ended up happening in the most controlled way possible. Not at my home, not at the townhouse, not with Graham trying to force a group photo moment. It happened through a supervised family introduction session arranged through the parenting coordinator, with clear boundaries and time limits, and June stayed close to me the whole time. Asher was confused, but he was gentle, and Leora's son was a sweet little whirlwind who did not deserve any of this. And I kept my face calm, because children do not deserve adult facial expressions that make them feel like they are the reason people are hurting. After that session, Graham tried to push for more. He wanted sleepovers. He wanted holidays. He wanted to act like the introduction solved everything, and the coordinator shut it down. Slow steps, predictable steps, no sudden blending, because sudden blending is what Graham likes. It lets him skip accountability and jump to the picture where he looks like a good dad surrounded by kids. Leora did not become my friend, and I did not become hers, but we became something practical. We agreed on one thing without ever needing to say it out loud. The kids deserve calm, and Graham does not get to manufacture calm by forcing people into proximity before trust exists. The day everything finally felt definitive was not a celebration. It was a weekday afternoon. I came home to a plain envelope from the court with the stamped final order copy. I put it in the file folder. I updated the kids' school contact forms to reflect the new custody language. Then I made dinner while June told me about a project and Asher asked for more cheese. And Graham was no longer the person who could rewrite my reality with a confident tone. He was just a parent on a schedule with a court order behind it, and that was enough.